Section 4. There was hurry and hest in Heorot now, for hands to bedeck it, and dense was the throng of men and women the wine-hall to cleanse, the guest-room to garnish. Gold gay shone the hangings that were wove on the wall, and wonders many, to delight each mortal that looks upon them. Though braced within by iron bands, that building bright was broken sorely. Rent were its hinges, the roof alone held safe and sound. When seared with crime, the fiendish foe his flight essayed, of life despairing. No light thing that the flight for safety, essay it who will. Force of fate, he shall find his way to the refuge ready for race of man, for soul possessors and sons of earth, and there his body on bed of death shall rest after revel. Arrived was the hour when to hall proceeded Halfdine's son. The king himself would sit to banquet. Ne'er heard I of host in haughtier throng, more graciously gathered round giver of rings. Bowed then to bench those bearers of glory, fain of the feasting. Fately received many a mead cup, the mighty in spirit kinsmen who sat in the sumptuous hall, Hrothgar and Hrothulf. Heorot now was filled with friends, the folk of Scyldings, ne'er yet had tried the traitor's deed. To Beowulf gave the bane of Halfdine a gold-wove banner, guerdon of triumph, broidered battle flag, breastplate and helmet, and a splendid sword was seen of many, borne to the brave one. Beowulf took cup in hall for such costly gifts. He suffered no shame in that soldier throng, for I heard a few heroes in heartier mood, with 4 such gifts, so fashioned with gold. On the ale bench honouring others thus, o'er the roof of the helmet high a ridge, wound with wires, kept ward o'er the head, lest the relict of files should fierce invade sharp in the strife, when that shielded hero should go to grapple against his foes. Then the earl's defence on the floor bade lead, coursers 8 with carven headgear adown the hall. One horse was decked with a saddle all shining and set in jewels. 'Twas the battle seat of the best of kings, when to play of swords the son of Halfdine was fain to fare, ne'er failed his valour in the crush of combat when corpses fell. To Beowulf over them both then gave the refuge of Ingwines right and power. O war steeds and weapons, wished him joy of them. Manfully thus the mighty prince hoard guard for heroes that hard fight repaid, with steeds and treasures contemned by none, who is willing to say the sooth aright. And the lord of earls to each that came, with Beowulf over the briny ways, an heirloom there at the ale bench gave, precious gift, and the price bade pay, in gold for him whom Grendel erst murdered, and fain of them more had killed, had not wisest God their word averted. And the man's brave mood the Maker then ruled humankind as here and now. Therefore is insight always best, and forethought of mind, how much awaits him of lief and of loath, who long time here through days of warfare this world endures. Then song and music mingled sounds, and the presence of Halfdine's head of armies, and harping was heard with the hero lay, as Hrothgar's singer the hall joy woke, along the mead seats making his song. Of that sudden raid on the sons of Finn, Halfdine's hero, Hnaef the Scylding, was fated to fall in the Frisian slaughter. Hildburg needed not hold in value her enemy's honour, innocent both, were the loved one she lost at the linden play. Bairn and brother they bowed to fate. Stricken by spears, 'twas a sorrowful woman. None doubted why the daughter of Hoc bewailed her doom when dawning came, and under the sky she saw them lying, kinsmen murdered, where most she had kenned of the sweets of the world. By war were swept too Finn's own liegemen, and few were left in the parleying place. He could ply no longer weapon nor war could he wage on Hengest. and rescue his remnant by right of arms from the prince's thane. A pact he offered. Another dwelling the Danes should have. Hall and high seat and half the power should fall to them in Frisian land, and at the fee-gifts. Folkwald's son, day by day the Danes should honour, the folk of Hengest favour with rings, even as truly with treasure and jewels, with fretted gold as his Frisian kin. He meant to honour in ale-hall there. Pact of peace they plighted further, on both sides firmly. Finn to Hengest with oath upon honour openly promised, that woeful remnant with wise men's aid, nobly to govern, so none of the guests by word or work should warp the treaty, or with malice of mind bemoan themselves, as forced to follow their fee-giver's slayer, lordless men as their lot ordained. Should Frisian, moreover, with foeman's taunt, that murderous hatred to mind recall, then edge of the sword must seal his doom. Oaths were given, and ancient gold heaped from hoard. The hardy Scylding battle-thane best on his bale-fire lay. All on the pyre were plain to see, the gory sark, the gilded swine crest, boar of hard iron, and aethelings many, slain by the sword at the slaughter they fell. It was Hildbur's hest at Nef's own pyre, the bairn of her body on brands to lay, his bones to burn on the bale-fire placed at his uncle's side. In sorrowful dirges bewept them the woman, great wailing ascended, then wound up to welkin the wildest of death-fires, roared o'er the hillock, heads all were melted, gashes burst, and blood gushed out from bites of the body. Balefire devoured greediest spirit, though spared not by war, out of either folk their flower was gone. Then hastened those heroes their home to see, friendless to find the Frisian land, houses and high burg Hengest still, through the death-dyed winter dwelt with Finn, holding pact yet of home he minded, though powerless his ring-decked prow to drive over the waters. Now waves rolled fierce, lashed by the winds, or winter locked them in icy fetters. Then fared another year to men's dwellings, as yet they do, the sun-bright skies that their season ever duly await. Far off winter was driven, fair lay earth's breast, and fain was the rover, the guest, to depart, though more gladly he pondered on wreaking his vengeance than roaming the deep, and how to hasten the hot encounter, where sons of the Frisians were sure to be. So he escaped not the common doom, when Hun with laughing the light of battle, best of blades, his bosom pierced. Its edge was famed with the Frisian earls. On fierce heart Finn there fell likewise, on himself at home the horrid sword death, for Guthlaf and Oslaf of grim attack had sorrowing told from seaways landed, mourning their woes. Finn's wavering spirit bode not in breast, the burg was reddened with blood of foemen, and Finn was slain. King amid clansmen the queen was taken. To their ship the Scylding warriors bore all the chattels the chieftain owned, whatever they found in Finn's domain of gems and jewels. The gentle wife o'er paths of the deep to the Danes they bore, led to her land. The lay was finished, the gleeman's song. Then glad rose the revel, bench boy brightened, bearers draw from their wonder bats wine. Comes Wealhtheow forth under gold crown, goes where the good pair sit, uncle and nephew, true each to the other one, kindred in amity. Unferth the spokesman at the Scylding lord's feet sat. Men had faith in his spirit, his keenness of courage, though kinsmen had found him unsure at the sword-play. The Scylding queen spoke. Quaff of this cup, my king and lord, breaker of rings, and blithe be thou. Gold friend of men, to the Geats here speak such words of mildness as men should use. Be glad with thy Geats, of those gifts be mindful, or near or far, which now thou hast. Men say to me, a son thou wishest yon hero to hold. Thy Heorot's purged jewel hall brightest, enjoy thou canst, with many a largess, and leave to thy kin, folk and realm, when forth thou goest to greet thy doom. For gracious I deem my Hrothulf, willing to hold and rule nobly our youths. If thou yield up first, Prince of Scyldings, thy part in the world, I ween with good he will well requite, offspring of ours, when all he minds that for him we did in his helpless days, of gift and grace, to gain him honour. Then she turned to the seat where her sons were placed, Threthric and Hrothmund, with heroes' bairns. Young men together, the Geat too sat there, Beowulf brave, the brothers between. A cup she gave him with kindly greeting, and winsome words of wounden gold. She offered to honour him arm jewels twain, corselet and rings, and of collars the noblest that ever I knew the earth around. Ne'er heard I so mighty, 'neath heaven's dome, a hoard gem of heroes, since Hammer bore to his bright-built burg the Brising's necklace, jewel and gem casket. Jealousy fled he, or Menrock's hate, chose help eternal. Hygelac Geat, grandson of Swerting, on the last of his raids this ring bore with him, under his banner the booty defending, the war spoil warding, but word o'erwhelmed him, what time in his daring dangers he sought feud with Frisians. Fairest of gems he bore with him, of the beaker of waves, sovereign strong under shield he died. Fell the corpse of the king into keeping of Franks. Gear of the breast and that gorgeous ring, weaker warriors won the spoil, after gripe of battle from Geatland's lord, and held the death field. Din rose in hall. Beowulf spake amid warriors and said, "This jewel enjoy in thy jocund youth. Beowulf loved these battle weeds wear, a royal treasure, and richly thrive. Preserve thy strength, and these striplings here, counsel in kindness requital be mine. Hast done such deeds that for days to come thou art famed among folk both far and near. So wide as washeth the wave of ocean his windy walls. Through the ways of life prosper, O Prince, I pray for thee. Rich possessions, to son of mine, be helpful indeed, and uphold his joys. Here every earl to the other is true, mild of mood to the master loyal. Thanes are friendly, the throng obedient, liegemen are revelling, list and obey. Went then to her place, that was proudest of feasts, flowed wine for the warriors. Word they knew not, destiny dire, and the doom to be seen by many an earl, when eve should come, and Hrothgar homeward hasten away, royal to rest. The room was guarded by an army of earls, as erst was done. They bared the bench balls, abroad they spread beds and bolsters. One beer carouser in danger of doom lay down in the hall. At their heads they set their shields of war, bucklers bright on the bench were there, over each atheling easy to see, the high battle helmet, the haughty spear, the corselet of rings. 'Twas their custom so, ever to be for battle prepared, at home or harrying which it were, even as oft as evil threatened their sovereign king, they were clansmen good. Then sank they to sleep with sorrow one bought his rest of the evening, as oft-time had happened when Grendel guarded that golden hall, evil wrought till his end drew nigh, slaughter for sins. 'Twas seen and told how an avenger survived the fiend, as was learned afar. The livelong time after that grim fight, Grendel's mother, monster of women, mourned her woe. She was doomed to dwell in the dreary waters, cold sea courses, since Cain cut down with edge of the sword his only brother, his father's offspring. Outlawed he fled, marked with murder, from men's delights, warded the wilds. There woke from him such fate-sent ghosts as Grendel, who war-wolf horrid at Heorot found, a warrior watching and waiting the fray, with whom the grisly one grappled amain. But the man remembered his mighty power, the glorious gift that God had sent him. In his Maker's mercy put his trust, for comfort and help, so he conquered the foe, felled the fiend, who fled abject, reft of joy to the realms of death, mankind's foe. And his mother now, gloomy and grim, would go that quest of sorrow, the death of her son to avenge. To Heorot came she, where helmeted Danes slept in the hall. Too soon came back old ills of the earls, when in she burst, the mother of Grendel, less grim though that terror, e'en as terror of woman in war is less, might of maid, than of men in arms, when hammer forged the falchion hard, sword gore-stained though swine of the helm, crested with keen blade carves amain. Then was in the hall the hard edge drawn, the swords on the settles, and shields a-many, firm held in hand, nor helmet minded, nor harness of mail whom that horror seized. Haste was hers, she would hie afar, and save her life when the liegeman saw her. Yet a single atheling up she seized, fast and firm as she fled to the moor. He was for Hrothgar of heroes the dearest, of trusty vassals betwixt the seas, whom she killed on his couch, a clansman famous, in battle brave. Nor was Beowulf there. Another house had been held apart, after giving of gold for the Geat renowned. Uproar filled Heorot, the hand all had viewed. Blood fleck she bore with her bale was returned, dole in the dwellings. 'Twas dire exchange, where Dane and Geat were doomed to give the lives of loved ones. Long-tried king, the hoary hero, at heart was sad, when he knew his noble no more lived, and dead indeed was his dearest thane. To his bower was Beowulf brought in haste, dauntless victor as daylight broke. Along with his earls the atheling lord, with his clansmen came where the king abode, waiting to see if the wielder of all would turn this tale of trouble and woe. Strode over floor the famed in strife, with his hand companions the hall resounded. Wishing to greet the wise old king, Ingwine's lord he asked if the night had passed in peace to the prince's mind. End of section 4.
Section 5. Hrothgar spake, helmet of Scyldings, ask not of pleasure, pain is renewed to Danish folk. Dead is Aeschere of Irmenlath, the elder brother, my sage adviser and stay in council, shoulder comrade in stress of fight, when warriors clashed and we warded our heads, hewed the helm boars. Hero famed should be every earl as Aeschere was. But here in Heorot a hand hath slain him of wandering death-sprite, I wot not whither. Proud of the prey, her path she took, fain of her fill. The feud she avenged that yesternight, unyieldingly. Grendel, in grimmest grasp thou killedst, seeing how long these liegemen mine he ruined and ravaged. Reft of life, in arms he fell. Now another comes, keen and cruel, her kin to avenge, faring far in feud of blood. So that many a thane shall think, whoe'er sorrows in soul for that sharer of rings, this is hardest of heart bales. The hand lies low that once was willing each wish to please. Land dwellers here, and liegemen mine, who house by those parts, I have heard relate that such a pair they have sometimes seen march stalkers mighty the moorland haunting, wandering spirits. One of them seemed, so far as my folk could fairly judge, of womankind, and one, accursed, in man's guise, trod the misery track of exile, though huger than human bulk. Grendel, in days long gone, they named him, folk of the land. His father they knew not, nor any brood that was born to him of treacherous spirits. Untrod is their home. By wolf cliffs haunt they, and windy headlands, fenways fearful, where flows the stream from mountains gliding to gloom of the rocks, underground flood. Not far is it hence in measure of miles that the mere expands, and o'er it the frost-bound forest hanging, sturdily rooted, shadows the wave. By night is a wonder weird to see, fire on the waters. So wise lived none of the sons of men to search those depths. Nay, though the heath-rover harried by dogs the horn-proud hart, this halt should seek, long distance driven his dear life, first on the brink he yields, ere he brave the plunge to hide his head. 'Tis no happy place. Thence the welter of waters washes up, wan to welkin, when winds bestir evil storms and air grows dusk, and the heavens weep. Now is help once more with thee alone, the land thou know'st not, place of fear, where thou findest out that sin-flecked being. Seek if thou dare. I will reward thee for waging this fight with ancient treasure, as erst I did with winding gold, if thou winnest back. Beowulf spake, bairn of Ecgtheow. Sorrow not, sage, it beseems us better friends to avenge than fruitlessly mourn them. Each of us, all must his end abide in the ways of the world. So win who may, glory ere death. When his days are told, that is the warrior's worthiest doom. Rise, O realm warder, ride we anon, and mark the trail of the mother of Grendel. No harbour shall hide her. Heed my promise. Enfolding of field or forested mountain or floor of the flood, let her flee whence she will. But thou this day endure in patience, as I ween thou wilt, thy woes, each one. Leapt up the greybeard. God he thanked, mighty lord, for the man's brave words. For Hrothgar soon a horse was saddled, wave-maned steed. The sovereign wise stately rode on. His shield-armed men followed in force. The footprints led along the woodland, widely seen, a path o'er the plain, where she passed, and trod the murky moor. Of men-at-arms she bore the bravest and best one, dead, him who with Hrothgar the homestead ruled. On then went the atheling borne, o'er stone cliffs, steep and straight defiles, narrow passes and unknown ways, headlands sheer, and the haunts of the Nicors. Foremost he fared, a few at his side of the wisest men, the ways to scan, till he found in a flash the forested hill hanging over the hoary rock, a woeful wood. The waves below were dyed in blood. The Danish men had sorrow of soul, and for Scyldings all, for many a hero, 'twas hard to bear, ill for earls, when Aesgare's head they found by the flood on the foreland there. Waves were welling, the warriors saw, hot with blood, but the horn sang oft battle-song bold. The band sat down, and watched on the water worm-like things, sea-dragons strange that sounded the deep, and nicors that lay on the ledge of the ness, such as oft essay at hour of morn on the road of sails their ruthless quest. And sea-snakes and monsters, these started away, swollen and savage that song to hear, that war-horn's blast. The warden of Geats, with bolt from bow, then balked of life, of wave-work, one monster. Amid its heart went the keen war-shaft. In water it seemed less doughty in swimming whom death had seized. Swift on the billows, with boar-spears well hooked and barbed, it was hard beset, done to death and dragged on the headland, wave-roamer wondrous. Warriors viewed the grisly quest. Then girt him Beowulf in martial mail, nor mourned for his life. His breastplate broad and bright of hues, woven by hand, should the waters dry. Well could it ward the warrior's body that battle should break on his breast in vain, nor harm his heart by the hand of a foe. And the helmet white that his head protected was destined to dare the deeps of the flood, though wave whirl win. 'Twas wound with chains, decked with gold, as in days of yore. The weaponsmith worked it wondrously, with swine forms set it, that swords nowise, brandished in battle, could bite that helm. Nor was that the meanest of mighty helps which Hrothgar's orator offered at need. Hrunting they named the hilted sword, of old-time heirlooms easily first. Iron was its edge, all etched with poison, with battle-blood hardened, nor blenched it at fight in hero's hand who held it ever, on paths of peril prepared to go to folkstead of foes. Not first time this it was destined to do a daring task, for he bore not in mind the bairn of Ecglaf, sturdy and strong, that speech he had made, drunk with wine. Now this weapon he lent to a stouter swordsman. Himself, though durst not under welter of waters wager his life, as loyal liegeman. So lost he his glory, honour of earls. With the other not so, who girded him now for the grim encounter. Beowulf spake, bairn of Ecgtheow, have mind, thou honoured offspring of Healfdene, gold friend of men. Now I go on this quest, sovereign wise, what once was said. If in thy cause it came that I should lose my life, thou wouldst loyal bide to me, though fallen, in father's place. Be guardian thou to this group of my thanes, my warrior friends, if war should seize me. And the goodly gifts thou gavest me, Hrothgar beloved, to Hygelac send. Geatland's king may ken by the gold, Hrethel's son see, when he stares at the treasure, that I got me a friend for goodness famed, and joyed, while I could, in my jewel bestower. And let Unferth wield this wondrous sword, earl far honoured, this heirloom precious, hard of edge. With Hrunting I seek doom of glory, or death shall take me. After these words the Weder Geat lord boldly hastened, biding never answer at all. The ocean floods closed o'er the hero. Long while of the day fled, ere he felt the floor of the sea. Soon found the fiend, who the flood domain, sword-hungry, held these 100 winters, greedy and grim, that some guest from above, some man, was raiding her monster realm. She grasped out for him with grisly claws, and the warrior seized, yet scathed she not his body hale. The breastplate hindered, as she strove to shatter the sark of war, the linked harness, with loathsome hand. Then bore this brine wolf, when bottom she touched, the lord of rings to the lair she haunted, whiles vainly he strove, though his valour held, weapon to wield against wondrous monsters that sore beset him, Sea beasts many tried with fierce tusks to tear his mail, and swarmed on the stranger. But soon he marked he was now in some hall, he knew not which, where water never could work him harm, nor through the roof could reach him ever fangs of the flood. Firelight he saw, beams of a blaze that brightly shone. Then the warrior was ware of that wolf of the deep, mere-wife monstrous. For mighty stroke he swung his blade, and the blow withheld not. Then sang on her head that seemly blade its war-song wild. But the warrior found the light of battle was loath to bite, to harm the heart. Its hard edge failed the noble at need, yet had known of old strife hand to hand, and had helmets cloven, doomed men's fighting gear. First time this for the gleaming blade that its glory fell. Firm still stood, nor failed in valour, heedful of high deeds, Hygelac's kinsman. Flung away fretted sword, featly jewelled, the angry earl. On earth it lay, steel-edged and stiff. His strength he trusted, hand-gripe of might. So man shall do, whenever in war he weens to earn him lasting fame, nor fears for his life. Seized them by shoulder, shrank not from combat the Geatish war-prince Grendel's mother. Flung then the fierce one, filled with wrath, his deadly foe, that she fell to ground. Swift on her part she paid him back with grisly grasp, and grappled with him. Spent with struggle stumbled the warrior, fiercest of fighting men, fell adown. On the hall guest she hurled herself, hent her short sword, broad and brown-edged, the bairn to avenge, the sole-born son. On his shoulder lay braided breast-mail, barring death, withstanding entrance of edge or blade. Life would have ended for Ecgtheow's son under wide earth, for that Earl of Geats, had his armour of war not aided him, battle-net hard, and holy God wielded the victory, wisest maker. The Lord of Heaven allowed his cause, and easily rose the Earl erect. Mid the battle-gear saw he a blade triumphant, old sword of Eotens, with edge of proof, warrior's heirloom, weapon unmatched. Save only 'twas more than other men to bandy of battle could bear at all, as the giants had wrought it, ready and keen. Seized then its chain hilt, the Scyldings' chieftain, bold and battle-grim, brandished the sword, reckless of life, and so wrathfully smote that it gripped her neck and grasped her hard, her bone-rings breaking. The blade pierced through that fated one's flesh. To floor she sank. Bloody the blade, he was blithe of his deed. Then blazed forth light. 'Twas bright within, as when from the sky there shines unclouded heaven's candle. The hall he scanned, by the wall then went he, his weapon raised high by its hilts, the Hygelac thane, angry and eager. That edge was not useless to the warrior now. He wished with speed Grendel to guerdon for grim raids many. For the war he waged on western Danes oftener far than an only time, when of Hrothgar's hearth-companions he slew in slumber, in sleep devoured, 15 men of the folk of Danes, and as many others outward bore his horrible prey. Well paid for that the wrathful prince, for now prone he saw Grendel stretched there, spent with war, spoiled of life, so scathed had left him Heorot's battle. The body sprang far when after death it endured the blow, sword-stroke savage that severed its head. Soon then saw the sage companions who waited with Hrothgar, watching the flood, that the tossing waters turbid grew, blood-stained the mere. Old men together, hoary-haired, of the hero spake. The warrior would not, they weened, again, proud of conquest, come to seek their mighty master. To many it seemed the wolf of the waves had won his life. The 9th hour came. The noble Scyldings left the headland. Homeward went the gold friend of men. But the guests sat on, stared at the surges, sick in heart, and wished, yet weened not, their winsome lord again to see. Now that sword began, from blood of the fight, in battle droppings, war blade to wane. 'Twas a wondrous thing that all of it melted as ice is wont, when frosty fetters the father loosens, unwinds the wave bonds, wielding all seasons and times. The true god he! Nor took from that dwelling the Duke of the Geats, save only the head and that hilt withal blazoned with jewels. The blade had melted, burned was the bright sword. Her blood was so hot, so poisoned the hell sprite who perished within there. Soon he was swimming, who safe saw in combat downfall of demons, up dove through the flood. The clashing waters were cleansed now, waste of waves, where the wandering fiend her life days left, and this lapsing world. Swam then to strand the sailor's refuge, sturdy in spirit, of sea booty glad, of burden brave he bore with him. Went then to greet him, and God they thanked, the Thane band, choice of their chieftain blithe, that safe and sound they could see him again. Soon from the hardy one helmet and armour deftly they doffed. Now drowsed the mere, water 'neath welkin with war blood stained. Forth they fared by the footpaths thence, merry at heart the highways measured well-known roads. Courageous men carried the head from the cliff by the sea, an arduous task for all the band, the firm in fight, since 4 were needed on the shaft of slaughter, strenuously to bear to the gold hall Grendel's head. So presently to the palace there, foemen fearless, 14 Geats, marching came. Their master of clan mighty amid them the meadow ways trod. Strode then within the sovereign Thane, fearless in fight, of fame renowned, hardy hero Hrothgar to greet. And next by the hair into hall was borne Grendel's head, where the henchmen were drinking, an awe to clan and queen alike, a monster of marvel. The men looked on. Beowulf spake, bairn of Ecgtheow, lo! Now this sea booty, son of Healfdene, lord of Scyldings, we've lustily brought thee sign of glory. Thou seest it here. Not lightly did I with my life escape. In war under water this work I essayed with endless effort, and even so my strength had been lost had the Lord not shielded me. Not a whit could I with Hrunting do in work of war. Though the weapon is good, yet a sword the sovereign of men vouchsafed me, to spy on the wall there, in splendour hanging, old, gigantic. How oft he guides the friendless wight! And I fought with that brand, felling in fight, since fate was with me, the house's wardens. That war-sword then all burned, bright blade, when the blood gushed o'er it, battle-sweat hot. But the hilt I brought back from my foes. So avenged I their fiendish deeds, death-fall of Danes, as was due and right. And this is my hest, that in Heorot now safe thou canst sleep with thy soldier band, and every thane of all thy folk, both old and young, no evil fear. Scyldings' lord, from that side again aught ill for thy earls, as erst thou must. Then the golden hilt for that grey-haired leader, hoary hero, in hand was laid, giant wrought, old, so owned and enjoyed it after downfall of devils, the Danish lord, wonder-smith's work, since the world was rid of that grim-souled fiend, the foe of God, murder marked, and his mother as well. Now it passed into power of the people's king, best of all that the oceans bound, who have scattered their gold o'er Scandia's isle. Hrothgar spake. The hilt he viewed, heirloom old, where was etched the rise of that far-off fight, where the floods o'erwhelmed, raging waves, the race of giants, fearful their fate, a folk estranged from God eternal, whence guerdon due in that waste of waters the wielder paid them. So on the guard of shining gold, in runic staves it was rightly said, for whom the serpent-traced sword was wrought, best of blades, in bygone days, and the hilt well wound. The wise one spake, son of Healfdene. Silent were all. Lo, so may he say who sooth and right follows mid folk, of far times mindful, a land-warden old, that this earl belongs to the better breed. So, borne aloft, thy fame must fly, O friend, my Beowulf, far and wide, o'er folksteads many. Firmly thou shalt all maintain, mighty strength with mood of wisdom, love of mine will I assure thee. As a while ago I promised, thou shalt prove a stay in future, in far-off years, to folk of thine, to the heroes a help. Was not Heremod thus to offspring of Ecgwela honour Scyldings, nor grew for their grace, but for grisly slaughter, for doom of death to the Danishmen? He slew, wrath-swollen, his shoulder comrades, companions at board. So he passed alone, chieftain haughty from human cheer. Though him the Maker with might endowed, delights of power, and uplifted high above all men, yet blood-fierce his mind, his breast-hoard grew, no bracelets gave he to Danes, as was due. He endured all joyless, strain of struggle and stress of woe, long feud with his folk. Here find thy lesson. Of virtue advise thee. This verse I have said for thee, wise from lapsed winters. Wondrous seems how to sons of men Almighty God in the strength of his spirit sendeth wisdom, estate, high station. He swayeth all things, whiles he letteth right lustily fare the heart of the hero of high-born race. In seat ancestral assigns him bliss, his folk's sure fortress in fee to hold, puts in his power great parts of the earth, empire so ample that end of it this wanter of wisdom weeneth none. So he waxes in wealth, no wise can harm him, illness or age. No evil cares shadow his spirit, no sword-hate threatens from ever an enemy. All the world wends at his will. No worse he knoweth, till all within him obstinate pride waxes and wakes, while the warden slumbers, the spirit's sentry. Sleep is too fast, which masters his might, and the murderer nears, stealthily shooting the shafts from his bow. End of section 4 of Beowulf.